Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm a total dork, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about everything I dislike about the Treyarch Zombies games. Stick around because we're starting right now. For as much as we love the Treyarch Zombies games, none of them have been perfect. With Black Ops Cold War coming out soon, I thought it would be a good idea to go through the past games and see what they did wrong. No criteria for anything on the list, it's all purely what I disliked from each game. Starting with World at War, the lack of diversity and bare-bones nature across every map really takes away from the replayability. It's more acceptable that the maps on this game are bare-bones because the game mode was just figuring itself out, but most of what they added in Varuk, Shinonuma, and Darius were obvious next steps. Aside from time constraints, there's no real reason that perks, Pack-a-Punch, and everything else couldn't have been in every other map. The lack of depth in each map has caused the game to lose replay value as time has gone on. Another huge problem World at War has are all of the glitches and exploits. World at War is an incredibly glitchy game, with glitches ranging from losing Jug while using the Wonder Waff, to players being able to jump inside of walls and become invisible, to only spawning 24 zombies on a single round. The lack of polish takes away even more replay value, and has caused me to gravitate more towards the remasters instead of the originals. The last thing I dislike about World at War is how the zombies attacked the player. Zombies in this game seem to grab the player instead of swiping at them, and I've always hated that. It makes the game feel even more glitchy when you're trying to get away from a zombie, and makes training on World at War almost impossible. Moving on to the original Black Ops, the weapon sandbox in this game is one of the worst in the franchise. The weapon sandbox wasn't great in World at War, but it felt appropriate because of the time period. The guns should be kind of shitty because that's historically accurate. But Black Ops 1 is 20 plus years in the future, and the guns feel worse than they did in World at War. Most of the guns don't have enough ammo or do enough damage to survive multiple rounds, and the snipers, shotguns, and most pistols don't have significant roles in the metagame. I always feel like I'm using the same assault rifles from the box, along with either the Colt or whatever the map's wonder weapon is, and it makes the game feel more repetitive than it should be. And speaking of the Colt, another thing I dislike is how every DLC map relies so heavily on PhD. You can avoid it on Ascension, but Moon, Call of the Dead, and especially Shangri-La require PhD for the best experience. In a game that already has 2 crutch perks in Solo Quick Revive and Jug, adding a 3rd crutch perk in PhD is just annoying. It's a great perk, but having to use it on every game, on every map, just gets tedious. Black Ops 1 also has the worst bosses of any game in the series. The monkeys on Ascension, George from Call of the Dead, and the astronaut on Moon are all some of the worst bosses in the entire franchise. The only good bosses were the Hellhounds on Kino, which are taken straight from World at War, and the Pentagon Thief from 5. The Napalm and Shrieker zombies from Shangri-La kind of fall in between, but lean more towards the negative side for me anyway. At the end of the day, we got one good original boss out of this game, and that just isn't acceptable. Black Ops 2 is a great game, but it has a fair amount of problems. For starters, we have to talk about transit. Now, I know a lot of people actually like transit, but there's a lot of people that don't, and I'm one of them. The fact that this was the launch map and that it was so obviously unfinished is a huge problem. The smaller survival maps made things a little better, but a lot of transit's problems carried over to them as well. Another problem I have with Black Ops 2 was the way buildables were implemented. Now don't get me wrong, I love that buildables are in the game. They add more depth to the game despite having to memorize 100 different part locations to use them, but a lot of the buildables replaced other aspects of the game, namely buyable traps. Pop quiz, how many buyable traps are there in all of Black Ops 2 Zombies? Time's up. The answer is 3. 3 buyable traps, and all of them are on Mob of the Dead. There's the acid trap, the fan trap, and the sniper tower on the docks. Every other trap in Black Ops 2 is a buildable, and by doing this, what they've done is take a part of the game and put it behind a roadblock. Instead of spending 1,000 points on an electric trap, you have to look up a YouTube tutorial and learn how to build the trample steam. And while buildables have more uses than just traps, it wasn't necessary to take viable traps out of the game. It's another roadblock between players in a game of zombies, and with each game getting progressively more complicated, it was a change that would eventually become the game mode's downfall. The next problem I'm going to bring up is actually a problem in both this game and the original Black Ops. It may seem like a nitpick, but I am infuriated on a near daily basis by the bullshit melee system that the zombies use in this game. In this game and the original Black Ops, zombies can and will hit you before the animation happens. What's the big deal, you ask? The big deal is when you try and knife a zombie on round 2 and go down even when the zombie didn't hit you. This was so infuriating, and I was so happy when Black Ops 3 changed to a 3-hit system because it completely solved this problem. The last problem I have with Black Ops 2 are the amount of glitches in this game. Black Ops 1 had a level of polish we didn't see in World at War. The game works incredibly well, but for some reason, Black Ops 2 can also be extremely buggy. I get that they were more ambitious with this game. They were pushing the limits of the Xbox and the PlayStation with this game, but you're supposed to go forward on polish, not backwards. Mob of the Dead, Origins, and Buried to a lesser extent are all done well, but Transit and Die Rise feel, and quite literally are, unfinished. It's not as noticeable in regular gameplay, but the Easter eggs are all incredibly glitchy, and makes doing the super Easter egg on the Victus maps far less appealing. Black Ops 3 is often seen as the height of the zombies game mode, but that doesn't mean it's beyond criticism. The most obvious criticism is how similar the maps are. While the maps are all certainly a different experience, they can sometimes feel a little too similar to one another. There isn't the map diversity of a game like Black Ops 1 or 2, and it can make the game feel repetitive. While this isn't a criticism that I fully agree with, I do see where it's coming from. The differences between Black Ops 3's maps are a little more subtle than previous games, but that doesn't mean they've gone unnoticed or don't have an effect on the way you play. This is a criticism a lot of people throw at the game, and I thought I'd point out that I actually liked it. Another common criticism of Black Ops 3 are the gobblegums. Don't get me wrong, I love that they're in the game, but they cause some problems of their own. For starters, they got extremely overpowered as time has gone on. The idea behind the extremely overpowered gobblegums is that you would only have a handful at any given time, but because you can buy them with real money, you can have hundreds of perkaholics, raindrops, and everything in between. The big problem I have with them is what they removed from the game. Black Ops 1 and 2 have a number of ways on each map to get more than 4 perks, and that added depth to the game mode. In Black Ops 3, you just pop a perkaholic, a soda fountain, or even an on the house or unquenchable. Small details like that got removed from the maps and were turned into gobblegums. The only way to still get free perks in Black Ops 3 that I can think of is the wall run on Revelations and the fruit plant on Zetsubo no Shima. These should have been on every Black Ops 3 map, and putting them behind gobblegums only took away from the game mode. Speaking of depth, let's take a second to talk about trip mines. What the fuck? Remember how awesome bouncing Bettys were in World at War, and how awesome Claymores were in Black Ops 1 and 2? They were fantastic. And in Black Ops 3, they turned them into a pathetic excuse for equipment, and you couldn't even stack them. You couldn't have a wall of trip mines backing you up like you could Claymores or Bettys. You can only have 2 on the map at any given time, and they're so weak they're not even worth using. They basically removed this part of the game entirely, and it was just another thing that removed depth from the game. They made up for it in a ton of other ways, but could you have not also made trip mines useful past round 5? Another smaller gripe I have with the game is that custom maps aren't playable on console. Now I know getting that to work would have been a technical challenge, but it would have been worth it 1,000 times over. It's not like it's impossible either. Crossplay is seemingly the way of the future with this franchise, and a lot of games have already made mods available on console. This is only a minor complaint because Black Ops 3 has an insane amount of content outside of customs, but it sucks to be a console player and then having to buy the game again on PC just to play more maps. That's why you're watching Garage Crovey in the background right now. I can't play a custom map for gameplay on console. Getting back to the bigger problems, let's talk about the most forgettable part of this game, and possibly the entire franchise. Nightmares. Back in the Black Ops 1 and 2 days, we all daydreamed about what a zombies campaign would look like, and it seemed like we were finally going to get that in Black Ops 3. But what we got instead was a poorly reskinned version of the Black Ops 3 campaign that just so happened to have zombies in them. Why did they make this? This isn't good, and it was extremely forgettable. How many of you watching had completely forgotten that this thing even existed until I brought it up just now? I'm guessing this part of your game left your mind the second you turn the game off. Just think about how much more they could have done with all the time they spent working on this. And then remember that it was so low effort that it probably took an intern at Treyarch a weekend to whip up. Nightmares was the most disappointing experience in zombies I had ever had, and I was damn sure it was gonna stay that way until the end of time. And then Black Ops 4 came out, and it's no secret that Black Ops 4 is a bit of a punching bag. The game has a lot of problems, enough to fill an entire separate video if I wanted. Since I don't want this game to take up half of this video, I'm gonna have to keep things brief for this one. The first thing that I just want to get out of the way quickly is the HUD. It's not good. I literally can't see anything while playing this game, and the fact that they never fixed it is concerning. Another huge problem that I'm going to have to keep small for the sake of this video is weapon balance. I touched on it in the last video I did, but every SMG aside from the Spitfire is useless due to the new point system. Snipers aren't as good as they were in Black Ops 2 or 3, and the only shotgun people use is the Mag 12. The only pistol anyone uses is the Strife, and basically everyone uses either an assault rifle or an LMG for casual games, or the Helion Salvo and whatever the map's wonder weapon is if you're going for a high round. Shifting gears, I want to talk about how Black Ops 4 breaks the game mode's gameplay loop. This is one of my biggest problems with Black Ops 4. So in every previous game, you spawn into the map with nothing. You have a pistol that you can't take past round 5, a couple of grenades, and a knife. You're extremely weak, but so are the zombies. Those zombies are going to get stronger as the rounds go on, so you have to open doors, turn on the power, get perks, better weapons, pack a punch of those weapons, and ultimately get stronger yourself in order to survive. That is the gameplay loop of zombies and other modes like it. But in Black Ops 4, you spawn with one of the best weapons in the game in either the Strife or the Mach 12, along with Wraith Fires, 4 elixirs that can get you out of any bad situation you might find yourself in, a specialist weapon, and 4 hits worth of health. You don't need to get stronger in Black Ops 4, and that breaks the gameplay loop of the mode. Aside from Pack-a-Punch, you can survive just fine until at least round 50 with everything you spawn in with. And speaking of what you spawn into the map with, and this is my second biggest problem with the game, let's talk about Create a Class. Everything I just mentioned that you can spawn in with is all chosen before the game starts in the Create a Class menu. What this does is essentially put your game on rails. All of the major decisions you make in your game, what perks you're going to have, and by extension how you play the game, your elixirs, your specialist weapon, and grenade types, is all chosen before you start the game. What this ends up doing is 1, putting a roadblock between you and your game, because now you have to think about what you're going to do before starting a game, and 2, it puts your game on rails because now you can't improvise and adapt once the game has started. If you want to change perks in the middle of the game, you have to reset. If you want to change specialists in the middle of the game, you have to reset. If you make any alterations to your strategy in the middle of the game, you have to reset. You can't just jump into a game and figure it out as you go, and this pushes away both hardcore and casual fans. Create a Class works in multiplayer because you can change your class in the middle of a match to adapt to the enemy's playstyle, but you can't do that in zombies, so you're just stuck on rails until the game ends. The last thing I'll touch on with Black Ops 4 are the maps. Black Ops 4 is really a mixed bag when it comes to map selection. On the one hand, you have masterpieces like 9 and Ancient Evil, And on the other hand, you have some of the worst maps to ever grace the franchise, like Dead of the Night and Alpha Omega. It's not so much that the maps on Black Ops 4 are all bad, but that they're wildly inconsistent. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe for more and leave some of the things you hate about zombies in the comments below. And because we talked about map design there at the end, you might want to check out my video ranking every single map in Zombies. It's an older video, but it's still pretty accurate. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.